Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Liberty Hangout podcast. My name is Justin, and I'm the founder of LibertyHangout.org, and I'm joined tonight by my co-host and co-founder of the site, James Chalemi. Tonight, we are joined by one of our friends and one of the earliest content producers for Liberty Hangout. His name is Kush Freeman. Now, Kush is a CBD hemp entrepreneur and business owner. He's also an Iraq War veteran, a decentralized society advocate, and he is soon to be the host of the Freeman Freedom podcast here on Liberty Hangout. Thank you so much for joining us this evening, Kush. How are you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me on. It's a real pleasure to be here.
So I know that we've had you on the show a few times before, and you've written a number of articles for the site, but would you like to reintroduce yourself to the audience and describe what freedom means to Kush Freeman?
To me, freedom means that a centralized entity off in a faraway place cannot write a bunch of stuff down on a piece of paper and force us all to comply to it, or else. Arbitrary rulings throughout human history, if you just go back as far as written history goes, it just hasn't worked out. I mean, we have like 10,000 years of evidence that proves that we have been doing things wrong over and over and over and over again. So freedom to me would be reorienting society in such a fashion where it can be centralized, where it respects the property rights of the individual, and that it allows personal liberty and for people to just be people without, having all this extra stuff that we don't need that just gets in the way of everything.
How would you say that you came to this philosophy of yours where you respect the freedom of the individual first and foremost?
Well, it's been a long journey, but as of recently, really deciding my opinions has come to just lots of reading, pretty much anything I can get my hands on. So the most recent book that I read was Chris Rachel's A Spontaneous Order. Amazing book if you haven't read it. Just then I was reading simple stuff like before that. I read some Spooner, some Hazlitt, some Hayek, and whatnot. So I'm kind of like catching myself up with the formal reading behind the libertarianism. I've always been in the libertarian circles through social media and in my personal life or whatnot. So now it's kind of just going back and re-examining the foundation and then really just kind of realigning my thoughts with what seems to be the most logical conclusion of these, philosophical underlying principles.
That's an amazing background behind you, dude. Where are you?
I'm at my house.
That's amazing. I mean, are you, because I don't know if you want to give up your location, but are you in an area of the country that grows a lot of Kush?
Oh yeah, I'm right here in Colorado Springs, Colorado, so I'm not like at a grow in Mexico somewhere or whatnot. So everything you see is completely legal. We do have a set limit that we're allowed to have, and we're not beyond that. And here's the plant that everybody's so afraid of.
That's so cool, bro. That's amazing. I don't know if people, because there's a lot of people listen on iTunes, but if you can see it, it's like a forest of goodness behind him. So
for anyone that's listening sometime in the future on iTunes, go to youtube.com/LibertyHangout, and you got to check out the backdrop behind Kush right now. There is literally Kush behind Kush.
That's awesome. And how long have you been associated with the marijuana business?
Formally here, just the past couple years. I moved back down to Colorado January 15th, 2010, and medical marijuana was legal at that time, but the recreational wasn't a thing yet. So when Amendment 64 came around, we examined, what the legislation looked like and kind of how it was going to come to fruition and how that was going to translate from paper to reality. And at that time, my business partner and I, we just decided that there was too much red tape and that we didn't want to give up a third of our profits, just for the state being like, well, we allowed you to do this, so be happy that you got anything. And so we opted out of that. We're just like, that's just not something we want to deal with. And then they allowed the industrial hemp to come around, and we decided to jump on that, and we ran at it full speed, and now we're here, we doing what we're doing, and it's becoming successful.
Now I know Justin and I, we're not big smokers or hemp users. Can you give like a breakdown of like what the laws are like? Because I know, are you able to ship across borders, or How does that work?
Well, it depends what it is. Like, for instance, if it's hemp or if it's marijuana. If it's marijuana,
Okay.
if it's an illegal state, obviously that's the wrong answer. And then if you put something like that in a box and ship it, um, it's my understanding that it's illegal to begin with at the federal level, so they could get you for that. And then if you're shipping it from a legal state or even a legal state to an illegal state, it's just a whole bunch of problems that you don't want to deal with.
So
Now,
they'll probably cite the Interstate Commerce Clause or something like that.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So there's a lot of gray involved with it right now because we got prohibitive laws going back to like the 1930s, and it's just a layer of mess, quite honestly.
Wow.
So there's no the advocates and the activists are out there kind of doing their thing, and the bigger companies are lobbying to kind of make reasonable changes, but there's still more time that needs to pass before it gets to a place where where it should be, where everyone's like, all right, well, that's a product, whatever, either I wanted to buy it or I didn't, and it is what it is, no different than alcohol or anything else.
Now, when it comes to hemp, I honestly didn't know anything about it until I met you over the internet a year ago, and that inspired me to try to start doing some research into it. And just in the during my senior year alone, I think I did 2, 3, maybe 4 research projects into hemp, just researching all the great medical and societal benefits of it. And so, Kush, can you explain to our listeners here all the wonderful benefits of hemp and why these big corporations and the government are afraid of it?
That was going to be my next question because I'm actually kind of really interested in this.
Okay, so cannabis's only crime it has ever committed was being a threat to corporate profits. We literally have this thing, and we can make it into anything we want. And not only can we make it into just about anything, it'll be like better than whatever the contesting or #1 product is on the market currently. So it is a massive paradigm shift across the spectrum. I can't even like quantify because the potential for application is just so ridiculously large that they could take it and go anywhere with it. Right now, I'm personally involved with making the CBD extracts, which has been reported to have all kinds of super awesome beneficial properties, but the name of my company is Industrial Hemp Supply, so although we're going to start with CBD products, it's our goal to move forward and to get into the industrial hemp and move forward into building materials, and we're going to try and process our own fuel and more beneficial applications like that. Not to say that the medicine doesn't have beneficial applications, but this could literally it could undo so much that's been damage that's been done just with the way that laws have been passed and the way that the government has pushed things forward over the decades.
What's the difference between marijuana and hemp? I'm having a little bit of trouble understanding.
Okay, so the difference between your medical marijuana and your hemp is an arbitrary number. It's 0.3%. So all of my hemp plants in my field have to be less than 0.3% THC. If they get above that, then I'm going to have a problem. But all the other cannabinoids...
That's like saying you can sell 40 proof vodka, but if it's 39 proof, you can't sell it. Or 41 proof, you can't sell it.
Yeah, that's pretty much what it is. They're just like, they're like, as long as you're not getting high off of it, we don't care. And that's pretty much what it comes down to on the industrial hemp side.
Wow.
But quite honestly, there's no real differentiation if you want to approach it, from just the plant. Cannabis is cannabis. Now they have a wide variety of different traits and phenotypes and whatnot, and all different traits are going to be desired for different reasons. Whether you're just the stoner who wants smoke a bowl and be blasted for hours, or whether you're someone with a legitimate medical problem who needs a very well processed and taken care of product to solve their problem, essentially.
Like what's because at the Libertarian National Convention I ran into a lot of pot smokers. But I was
Johnson?
yeah, exactly. We get Gary Johnson. But I was talking because there was it was almost its own caucus of pot smokers, and we were talking about different types of strands and different types of things. And the 2 words that kept coming up were indica and sativa.
Mhm.
That can you explain? Because I mean, my girlfriend smokes a lot of weed, but I don't really understand it.
So you're gonna have like three main types. There's the indica, and those are typically shorter, bushier plants with fat, broad leaves. And then you have the sativas, and they typically grow much taller and have short, skinny leaves. And then there's the third, lesser-known cousin, if you will. It's called ruderalis, and it's it's kind of temperamental, and it can be hard to deal with. So it's why typically growers don't favor it, but someone will find an application and a decent use for it. I actually seen a pretty interesting article on it, but I'm not going to cite it because I only got to read like half of it, and I want to know what I'm talking about if I'm going to bring it up. But I could. Uh, but speaking as a grower, I can definitely say that these different types of plants have different purposes that outside of just like the effects of the cannabinoids that I could take into account. If I'm, like, let's say I'm going to organize a grow, maybe I only have 9 feet of space to work with, which cuts me down to 6 feet after I have lights in. So I don't want a plant that's going to be trying to grow 16 feet tall.
Do you smoke?
Not really often. I
Okay.
prefer to. I like the CBD stuff, quite honestly. After what
Okay.
I've read on it, don't get me wrong. I mean, if there's a social thing happening, I'm a cannabis user, but
Gotcha.
I'm way too busy to be sitting around, just smoking joints all the time or whatever. I
Good for
treat it
you.
like if I were gonna go out and drink a beer, quite honestly.
I think that what intrigued me most when I was doing my research into hemp was honestly looking into the potential that it had as an alternative fuel, and I actually did an entire research project just on that alone. And what's really interesting, what blows my mind, is that you have all these environmentalists on the left that want to push forth things like solar energy or wind power, but when I was looking into those actually give off more harmful, toxic chemicals and gases than what we're already using with fossil fuels, and not a lot of people look into all the benefits that can be attained from hemp. So I was doing the research and comparing and contrasting, and it was night and day between something like solar and hemp, because with solar it requires dozens, sometimes even hundreds of solar panels just to emit the same amount of energy that you can get from just 5 gallons of gas. And for hemp, it's actually, from what I found, it's very comparable to fossil fuels in the
How do
output.
you, Justin? How do you use? You burn the hemp?
Right. There's a process. I forget what the name of it. Kush can probably talk to it more than I can, but there is a process where you do burn the hemp, and it can be made
Oh,
into an oil.
Yeah,
wow,
I
that's sick.
haven't researched
That's
that
sick.
entire process, but I'll actually do a show on it later because I have a CEO on my personal account. He has a hemp company down in Costa Rica, and that's what he does. He makes hemp fuel. I already talked to him. I'm like, hey, if I want to get this for
Wow.
my trucks, what do I got to do? He's like, you give me a phone call and we'll ship drums right to your house. And I was
Yes.
like,
So for
all
Wait,
right.
it goes right into your gas tank?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So the cool thing about it, like for any of the environmentalists that are and we probably don't have many leftist followers, so I don't think we have any environmentalists listening. But let's say there is just one environmentalist out there. If we can let them know this one short
Hey, I'm an
message that.
environmentalist. Come on. I like the environment.
All right,
Right?
James is our environmentalist out here. So, James, if
Perfect.
you're an advocate of solar energy or even wind, when it comes to wind power, do you know that it kills 1 million birds per year in the U.S. alone?
Oh, I couldn't
Whereas
believe
hemp,
it.
all you do is put a seed in the ground, and it's going to enrich the soil. Um, Fossil fuels, like I said, it's very comparable in its output with fossil fuels, but fossil fuels, you are still going to have that pollution into the air. You have the potential for acid rain. When you're using hemp, you don't get any of that. There's literally no risk involved, from what I found.
And
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure if they really scienced it, I'm sure they could find some minute thing somewhere where like, oh, this is that one bad thing,
I
and
think
then you have the whole.
the one thing that I found was that it can release some toxic gases in the burning process, but that is so minimal compared to the toxins put into the air from solar, from wind, and from fossil
well,
fuels.
Kush, you were in Afghanistan or Iraq?
Iraq.
Iraq. Okay, because I just talked to a couple days ago, and this is kind of a trend I've been seeing when talking to veterans. But he was a veteran of Afghanistan, I think around 2004, and the
Okay.
trend I've been seeing is everyone. What they've been saying is we were there for lithium. We were there to mine lithium. And that the more veterans I talk to, that's the more popular trend I see. Now, I mean, have you ever seen a lithium mine? How just devastating it is to the world at large. Like in comparison to oil drills or anything else, a lithium mine kills the environment. Let's not talk about how uneconomical it is, because now we're seeing that even with Tesla and companies that are trying to follow suit like that, they're losing money because of how much money it costs to charge those batteries in comparison to gas. So yeah, I mean this hemp fuel and I mean even solar and some wind, but I mean this is the way of the future. I think definitely there's something to be tapped into here.
And all these other alternative fuels, they're not. They like to call solar renewable. They like to call wind energy renewable.
Right.
But it's at the end of the day, you're still having to produce those solar panels. You're still having to produce those hefty wind turbines. Hemp, you just put a seed in the ground. That is truly renewable.
And the wonderful thing about the plant too, we're actually gonna take soil samples this year, but there's reclamation effects that the hemp has. Like, for instance, we're here in Lamar, Colorado. Monocropping is a practice that all the farmers use, so they'll kind of use the same stuff in the same areas. So all these nutrients get taken out of the ground, and then after so many successive years, it's hard for them, to have a vibrant, happy crop because, the plants just don't have, entirely what they need. And the hemp restores that in the ground just by growing. There's like no loss or anything. There's so many like negatives that aren't associated with this that would be associated with any other practice that we use just by sheer virtue of what it is. And I feel like it's time to move on. Now, obviously, you can't just, all right, we're going to stop oil today, and then, it has to be a transition. The best way to distribute it properly would be, through the free market, and let entrepreneurs innovate and find the best ways, and then they can distribute it, like I said, through the market more efficiently than any government program could ever hope to pretend to try to.
Now, I know that you are you like to call yourself a big advocate for a decentralized society. I know that you're an advocate for state secession. If there was one thing that you could tell the Texans that are dearly afraid of that plant sitting behind you, what would you tell them?
Well, I don't know how the Texans would respond, but I know what I could go and say to the ranchers. I could go out to the ranchers and be like, I have a crop right here behind me that will make you lots of money, and it doesn't do anything to the environment. In fact, it will only, over time, increase the benefits of everything that you're doing. And it'll only make everything better. So let me dive into that a little more so I don't give such a vague explanation. For instance, right over here we got some chickens, right? So when we trim our plants, we take the leaves and we feed them to the chickens. Now the chickens eat this, and it's super good for the chickens. So now when the chickens are laying and the chickens are pooping and doing all the stuff that chickens do, we get better, healthier eggs. We get if we butcher the chickens, then there's actually chicken in the chicken and not a bunch of chemicals because we didn't put any chemicals there. The chickens are healthier, the food is better, and then also the guano that comes from them that goes back into the plants is also better, and it helps the plants grow more healthy and vibrant. So you're like restacking the whole food chain on top of itself, doing things that it already does just because it is what it is, and you're completely just like building everything from the ground up to just like perform its best. So like essentially think of an economy, but compare that economy to a person, and that person's in shape. They exercise, they're not too crazy with it. Maybe they run their hour, go lift for an hour or something, every day, and they're eating good. They're gonna be happy. They're gonna be healthy. They're gonna be fit. And they're gonna have a better quality of life than someone who's eating trash, drastically overweight. They're not going to be happy, and all these things that they're going to deal with, just because of all the negatives that are involved with their situation.
Wow, I mean, the way you speak about this is it's like an art. It's like watching someone, it's like watching Jordan in his prime, or watching, like Mozart. You're like so knowledgeable on this subject. I mean, what got you interested in this?
Well, I was actually, back in high school, I was just one of those kids that, like, my friends were all like, hey, you want to go back and try this? And I was like, yeah, sure, whatever. And then So, did the things that high school kids did, and it was just kind of in my life, just always one of them things that was around in social circles and whatnot like that. So it wasn't like this super huge deal to me personally or like this big stigma. It was just something people did, and it was what it was. And then when I got older and I got out of the Army and legalization in states started to happen and like the medical benefits that were really starting to come out that everybody kind of knew about and whispered and talked about, but there wasn't really like true science. When that science started coming out, I was really able to kind of start to begin to see the potential of where this was going, and my life kind of started moving in this direction. And then just having an open mind into it, reading articles as they came up, being like, that's interesting. And then watching like things like I seen this show on TV. It was like illegal drugs and how they got that way. And the one on marijuana was they basically just banned it because the timber industries were all like, yeah, our profits, yo.
What's the name of your company?
It's Industrial Hemp Supply, LLC.
Industrial Hemp Supply. Okay, so you obviously are a successful businessman as well as a connoisseur of hemp and cannabis and certain things like that. So kind of like Justin and me, we have skin in the game. We have, we have our careers to look forward to. We have certain things that are affected by the world around us. They are affected by who's in power, who's dictating what we can and can't do. So obviously you knew that we came out, Justin and I came out as supporters of Austin Peterson, RIP, but it didn't work out too well. But we progressed in the movement, and that was what we were trying to do, and I'm sure Austin would say the same thing. But my question is, because I have breaking news coming from CNN, is that Governor Chris Christie is being vetted as Donald Trump's probable VP selection. So right now we're looking at Donald Trump and Chris Christie versus probably Hillary Clinton and Elizabeth Warren versus Gary Johnson and William Weld. So I mean, as a libertarian, are you taking the non-voting approach? Because I know that might affect you if you don't vote, or it might affect you if you do. So can you just expound on that a little bit?
Yeah, I haven't voted since 2002. As far as I'm concerned, there's all liberals running for the election. There is no libertarian. There is no conservative. Look, the Democratic Party has taken over. They're the power party. They run the show. They got all their puppets in. People can say what they want. They can say, oh, I'm voting conservative for Trump, or I'm going to be libertarian and vote for Gary Johnson. They're not. They're establishment insiders. Now, with the prospect of Chris Christie and his very vehement anti-cannabis speeches that he's given in the past, here's the problem that an administration is going to run into with Colorado. The people obviously here will be completely against it, but the state's going to be against it too, because the state makes a lot of money off of cannabis.
Well, that's the thing. That's the thing. I mean, we talk about Texas. We're always talking about Texas to secede, Texas to secede. If a Trump Christie administration, because I've heard Governor Chris Christie say he was going to throw whoever smokes pot, we're going to crack down on pot. Colorado, we're going to bust up the joint.
I think of all the candidates running in the GOP, you can say Marco Rubio. With the exclusion of Marco Rubio, there was no candidate more in favor of the drug war than Chris Christie.
Mm-hmm.
So, how is there a chance that we see a pushback from the state of Colorado from Kush Freeman if Chris Christie himself comes knocking down your door with an M16?
Well, if I can become a big enough player quick enough, I'll be the one to spearhead the secession legislation if I can. Because if I have the money to put behind it, I'll just try my best to get it to go through. Because in the cannabis movement here in Colorado, we go to events and there's activists there. We can network with these people. We could do something. I bet. We could do something through the state legislature if it came to it. If Christie came in and was just like, I'm going to enforce the federal law and Trump's behind me. All you potheads, we're sending the men with guns.
And you know that he's going to try to find a way to pit it on 9/11. Go after the marijuana because 9/11.
Like them terrorists were growing cannabis. We know it in their caves with their box cutters.
Now,
cannabis
Kush,
can't melt steel beams.
Now, Kush, since we're out here on the East Coast, we can't really speak to what's going on over there. But can you tell us how much the stigma surrounding hemp and marijuana has changed since Colorado legalized it a few years ago?
So, like, even before it was like, everyone here was just pretty much like, it's weed. Like, who cares? Like, there's other shit that we could worry about. You know, there's a meth problem. There's other black market crime that's associated with just Denver being a hub in the area that it is. So the general attitude of the average person for the most part was just like, yeah, whatever. So, but all the millennials, you know, when that came up, you know, who grew up on hip hop were all like, yo, we're gonna make this a thing. And actually, when Amendment 64 was up, I was against it not because I didn't want to see it become legal, not
Well, because you didn't want to pay the taxes on
well,
it.
but yeah, because the taxes was just so heavy. It's ridiculous. It's like wiring the state directly into your bank account. Like, okay, there's just always 30% less in my pocket now because, you know, the state's mouth is open at the bottom of my pocket.
I think you raised a really
Yeah.
good point there about saying how you initially opposed Amendment 64 because of all the stringent regulation and taxes on hemp. Do you think that you'd be able to tell people? I know that a lot of people, especially probably the liberals in particular, they would probably fight to legalize whatever, and then they'll end the battle at that. Can you tell them why they shouldn't end the battle there?
Well, you should definitely push for it on these reasons. So after the legalization happened, it breaks up the black market overnight. There is no black market. It can come out in the open. People don't have to do shady stuff behind closed doors. All that stuff goes away. Then because it's not like one of these illegal things that's glorified, the numbers of people that use it actually go down. Like, the laws, as we know, don't affect. Either someone's going to use or they're not going to use. They're going to make that decision for themselves. But when it's not kind of stigmatized and glorified, you know, and kind of put up on that pedestal because it is illegal, it's like less attractive, you know, to just people in general. And we had, what other statistics? We had, like, drunk driving accidents went down, like, significantly. I'd have to pull up the list of it, but if it's happened in every, like, geographical area that's legalized, use goes down. It affects the crime rates. Those obviously go down because they're not locking up all these people for having a plant. But there's deeper, greater things that go with that. So you're not putting nonviolent people in a violent environment and then expect them to come out and not be violent. And it stops that whole cycle of madness within the prison industrial complex, which is why police like to lobby against it so much. People just treat it like it is. It's a plant, you know. It has effects. Some people use it for, you know, for medicinal purposes. Some people use it for recreational purposes. Entrepreneurs are going to find ways to use it for business purposes. It's a material. Let's treat it like it and use it as such.
Right. I know that some of the uses we mentioned were obviously for medicinal use as an alternative fuel, but I think some of the big ones that we didn't touch up on is that it can replace the timber industry. So we were talking before about renewable energy and renewable sources. Yeah, you can say that cutting down a tree and planting it all over again, that can be renewable for paper, but how much quicker will it be for just putting a little plant in the ground and you get paper that way? You know, George Washington and the Founding Fathers, they wrote on hemp paper, believe it or
The
not.
Declaration of Independence was hemp paper, and so was the Constitution, all that good fun stuff. You know, until someone decided to lobby for it and take this wonderful material away from all of us.
You know what, Kush? If the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence are written on hemp paper, should we be locking up those in D.C. that have it in their possession?
You could, depending on the state.
Yeah.
Another thing that's crazy too, it's going to be a hard thing with states trying to legalize and regulate at the same time because of their budgets. So it's going to be, in the current environment, it's going to be very, very difficult for people to sell cannabis legislation to the state without it being heavily taxed. I just don't see a feasible way to get around that unless someone's just like, you know what, I got $1 billion, I'm just going to lobby it until it goes through.
Well, it's the same thing as what happens with drinking ages. The same reason why states can't lower their drinking ages is because the highway funds will dry up as soon as they do it. I forget which court case it was, but they tried to rule that unconstitutional, but it didn't stick. Now, so going back to my other question. So you're not voting in this next election?
No, there's absolutely no one even remotely close to anything I would put my
Well,
axe
I
on to
mean,
give my consent to.
Liberty Hangout is in no way going to endorse Gary Johnson. We don't see him as a libertarian solution to many of the problems. But as somebody that is a avid uh, consumer producer of hemp, of cannabis, you don't see any benefit in maybe just holding your breath and pushing that button for him.
Well, I'm looking at it completely differently. Businesses make change in this country, not elections. Sure, politicians get hired by the mega corporations and they make the change for the corporations, but if you don't if you don't have the ability to lobby, if you don't have the ability to put in legislation, if you don't have the ability to put things into the system, the vote at the ballot box doesn't really matter so much. I mean, look at what the pharmaceutical companies can do. Look at what Big Tobacco just did with vapes. These are
He's making
how
good points, man.
this
I
is
mean, the
how
man
you
is
make
making good points.
I think that this can segue into a good question. Do you think that this is a battle better fought at the local level than the federal level?
I think it'd be better for people to focus on the local areas. It'd be great if we could get cannabis descheduled. That would be absolutely amazing. That would knock out, many barriers. But it's going to be much more difficult at the federal level than it's going to be at your state level.
Interesting.
So now, and it depends how your orientation is too. If you're like in the cannabis industry, or even if you're in another industry and you can use a cannabis product, whether it's a building material or something you can put in a food product or whatever. What you're going to want to do is, as you go, you get involved in activism, and then you try to get the state to deregulate. And then when you do the deregulation, you're doing the opposite of what the giant corporations do. You lobby it so you can give a freedom to everybody, not just you yourself, as opposed to the inverse, where it's, well, I'm going to write the rules, and now nobody can get into the market, and everybody's screwed, and it sucks. And
I mean, it
what it
was you.
is.
It was people like you that were the reason. Because I'm so undecided. But it was people like you in your industry that I was like, okay, well maybe I could just hold everything up that I believe in for a second and go push the button for Gary Johnson, because I figured it would make a difference. But you're making so many good points against that. Now I'm
Well, and
just swinging
like,
in the opposite direction.
and you guys were there. You guys broke the story about the pistol and all that stuff. And to me, it was just clear cut. Like, this guy was just put in to be the controlled opposition. That's just my opinion. So everybody doesn't have to get all conspiracy theory on me. But to me, it just seems like, really, of all the libertarian candidates that were proposed, Gary Johnson was the best one that we could pick. Him and his boy, anti-gun Weld. Come on.
Hey, I gotta tell you, because it was actually Justin who did pretty much all of the legwork on that story, because he broke it. And the funny part was, I was there. He's on the other side of the country, and he's breaking the story, calling delegates and doing all the rest of it. But I mean, I talked to all of the presidential candidates. I met a lot of people. I didn't meet one person supporting Gary Johnson that was under maybe 45. I mean, everybody supporting Gary Johnson was old, and then you had Charles Perallo, and so that was what we had going on there. And I mean, it looked like he had just found his father for the first time. Like he had left him at the hospital, and he was following him around like his little puppy dog. So I don't really know what was going on, but it's like a boys' club, like just like any other political party. It looked like. So that's the only best explanation that somebody on the ground there could give.
And I wanted to ask you guys an interesting question. So Bernie Sanders was very popular out here in Colorado, and I see Bernie Sanders stickers on cars absolutely everywhere. You want to know how many Hillary Clinton stickers I've seen on the back of people's cars?
Probably not many.
One time.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. There's nobody on my wall that's supporting Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump. I don't know where all these votes are coming from.
I see all. That's what I remember. I raised this point last summer when Trump was leading all the polls. I was writing on my Twitter. I was writing on my Facebook. I was like, guys, Trump is winning everything, but I don't see anyone supporting him. I mean, right now his support is very obvious and vociferous, but the support for Hillary, I'm just not seeing it.
Well, this is the thing. This is why I think these polls are, excuse my language, bullshit. Because I think that these polls, like Kush was talking about before, when you talk about the influence tobacco, big pharma, all these different industries, the oil industry, that they have on these things. I mean, you'll call me a conspiracy theorist, but I mean, call me whatever you'd like. I really could care less what you think. It really is maybe Gary Johnson and Will Weld do have a chance to win. Maybe when the general election does come around, the support that supposedly in all these polls drops from the floor.
Oh, I don't know about that, James. Did you see the latest polls today where Gary Johnson was polling worse than the sweet meteor of death and D's nuts?
Where he belongs, mind you.
I feel like D's nuts is a candidate that we can all get behind, though.
That was a hat I wanted for 4th of July, but I got a Second Amendment one instead. But it is what it is. That one and the Hillary Clinton for prison. That one I wanted those.
I love seeing those shirts. They bring a smile to my face.
But I had someone, James, after you just broke the news on the show about Chris Christie being he's probably going to be selected for VP for Donald Trump. I had tweeted about it on the Liberty Hangout account, and someone tweeted back from me saying it's really like he's trying not to win. And you know what? Here's the thing. A lot of the Never Trump people were saying from the beginning, oh, he's just a Hillary plant. And then Gary Johnson comes in and selects Bill Weld, who is a known Clinton associate for many decades, since the days of Watergate. I mean, no politician has closer ties to the Clintons than Bill Weld, the VP selection for the, quote, Libertarian Party. And so you see these candidates that are just cowering to Hillary, and then it really does make you question if this is all fixed for her to win it.
Well, and the pistol thing was one thing, but when I seen him coming out, be like, Hillary's my homegirl, like we go way back, and all this.
What the hell was that?
He said CNN town hall. Here's the thing that boggles my mind is that the Gary Johnson campaign is coming out saying that they want to try to bring in these Bernie supporters, which I can understand that. A lot of them do have this anti-establishment sentiment. A lot of them do agree with libertarians on the drug war.
Yeah, their minds are able to they're malleable. They're able to be influenced very easily.
Yeah, but and here's the thing though. So he's going on CNN to try to influence these Bernie supporters to vote for him, and what does he do? All these Bernie supporters hate Hillary. They think she's corrupt, and that is the reason that they were supporting Bernie. Yet what does Gary Johnson do on the CNN town hall, the biggest exposure he'll ever get in his entire life? He calls Hillary Clinton a wonderful public servant, and Bill Weld, he talks about the raving relationship that he's had, and that Hillary's more than qualified to be president, and that he would vote for her if there was no libertarian candidate.
They asked him, what do you think about Hillary Clinton? The first words out of his mouth were, good kid. How old is Weld? Jason Stapleton made that point the other day. I almost fell out of my car seat. I was crying. How old is he, good kid? What does that even mean? Oh my God! I'll tell you what. I cannot wait for these debates. It is going to be the best hour in television, or 2 hours in television this entire year. I can't wait. I'm so excited.
It's gonna be hilarious.
I think that if it's gonna be, I gotta interject there, James. If it's going to be Chris Christie and Elizabeth Warren as the VPs, I can't wait for the VP debates.
Oh my God! Michael Malice gives I don't know if you guys have heard it, but he was on the Tom Woods show a couple weeks ago, and he gave a breakdown of how he thought the debates were going to go, and it's hilarious. He's very insightful, so I would definitely take a look at that if you want to laugh.
I have this funny meme in my folder, and it's like American politics has been reduced to that of a Dragon Ball Z episode. Will Hillary Clinton get charged for one of her many lists of crimes? Will Trump build a wall? Stay tuned to find out next week on Dragon Ball Z.
I mean, to be honest, to get your news now, and you have to go to these comedy type shows, but they're all so far left, most of them, that it's like they're the only ones that will actually tell the truth, because there is still a little bit of wiggle room left in comedy where you can say things that would get you fired.
I don't know about that, James. I think a lot of it. Have you seen all the commercials that Bud Light has been running with Amy Schumer and the other SJW comedians?
Yeah, it's
I mean they're trying. The left is trying to influence everything now. They're good.
I thought who was it? What's her name? The girl from Comedy Central, the new one, the older blonde girl.
Susan B.
Yeah, when she did the Gary Johnson interview, or she covered the Libertarian Party, I thought that was pretty good. I mean, obviously she was a little biased, but I thought she kept it real for the most part. I thought, I mean, that John Daly was one of my favorites, even though he swung a little left too. But I thought at least he was doing what he thought was right. I mean, he was using what was at his disposal to give you the news.
And I think maybe to counter the narrative set by the left, I think maybe we need our fair share of libertarian comedians. The right is trying to get theirs. They have guys like Steven Crowder. They have Milo Yiannopoulos. And you know what?
Yeah, have you heard Dave East? Dave East. Dave West? Dave West? Is that his name? Dave, the guy, he's on Kennedy a lot. Kennedy is also a comedian, kind of. But she has him on a lot. It's Dave Smith. Dave Smith. He was on Tom Woods' podcast. He's a stand-up comedian, ANCAP.
Oh, wow.
But he's actually getting really famous. He's on Fox Business all the time now. Yeah, he's actually really good. I take a look into him, too. He's got a great mind.
What's that name again, so we can catch that?
Dave Smith.
Dave Smith. I went through every last name in the book.
Dave Smith. There is also, for anyone that wants to check him out, I just came into contact with him a couple of weeks ago. His name is Jeremy McClellan. He's another libertarian comedian, and he performed at the Libertarian National Convention.
This year?
Yeah. He performed at the convention. He also performed at Young Americans for Liberty convention, Students for Liberty convention.
Oh, nice.
So he's starting to get around.
Well, that's awesome, because we need all the Bill Hicks and George Carlin in the world that we can get.
Yeah. I was listening to Carlin last night. I was actually showing my girlfriend the clip about when he was talking about we don't have leaders, we have owners. Where they tell you everything you want to do. I mean or they tell you everything they want you to do. That's missed. You know, that really is something that only George Carlin could do.
Well, in his very last stand-up that he put out before he passed, like, he just came right out raw and just like, this is how it is. Obviously, you know, he did his shtick, but I mean, he just pretty much came out and was like, yo, we're slaves, and you're just gonna have to accept that. So.
Yeah.
I think too that the more comedians that we can have in our circles, we can really make light of what is a dark situation. I mean, I think like I like taking the Adam Kokesh mentality of things. If you are able to get emotional over all of this and really let it beat you down, then you're letting those in power win, because you're proving that you can be controlled. So you can't let it affect you. You need to make the best of a dark situation. And I think that if we can get more libertarian comedians, then we're going to be able to win in the long run.
But comedy serves a good purpose for that. Like, when I was in the military on deployment, like, you had to have a sense of humor, because if you didn't have a sense of humor about just even stupid random stuff, like, just the monotony of being in the situation that you're in will drive you crazy. So having people out there, you know, who can make, you know, poke fun at stuff and then get a little truth in there too, I mean, the more the merrier. It's really it's just all for the betterment of everybody, quite honestly, you know, given the nature of how messed up everything is.
Absolutely, man. So I know that, Kush, you're going to be starting a podcast soon on Liberty Hangout. It's going to be called the it's a tongue twister. The Freeman Freedom Podcast. Want to tell us a little bit about what you plan on doing on the Freeman Freedom Podcast?
Yeah, so basically what the focus is going to be is about how we can get from where we are now to a decentralized society, and how we can turn this thought into a tangible thing that, you know, you can hop in your car to drive somewhere and touch it. Obviously, because I'm in the cannabis industry, we're going to cover lots of stuff on kind of what's going on here in Colorado. So, for instance, a lot of municipalities and counties are trying to restrict our cannabis freedoms. And basically, you know, just try to make it illegal again. What they want to do is just make it where you have your license and it's impossible to get, and you're under the state's, you know, tab, and, you know, nothing for nobody else. They just want to filter it directly through their channels, not, you know, this free recreational cannabis like everybody across the country thinks it is. Now, we have that now, but you know, they're already eroding at these rights. So I'm going to go have more than a handful of episodes where we'll go into greater detail on that. I'm also looking forward to getting Chris Rachel's on. I would love to chat with him and about his book.
Good dude.
Yeah, I talked to him briefly on Facebook and asked him if he'd want to come on, and, you know, maybe he changed his mind, maybe he didn't. I would assume it'd be something that he'd want to do, considering the correspondence that he has with you guys. But, you know, I'll ask him and we'll see.
One of my intellectual sparring partners for sure.
Right on. Well, with the complexity that he wrote that book, I'm definitely looking forward to having a chat with him about that. To say the least about that. I have a friend who is in the solar industry. I'm gonna get him on. I'm gonna have my business partner on. We'll talk more about our business, what we're doing. We can go into more detail on the CBD, and that's where I'm actually gonna have all the statistics and whatnot prepared. So I'll come back and I'll further answer, like, what are the results of legalization and what are the impacts within the community.
Awesome.
And we'll have that taken care of. And then really, and then I'm going to focus on kind of getting people on the show who have been consistent with Liberty over the years. So kind of the people I've seen in my Facebook feed who have done nothing, but just, kind of been pioneers, just raising their flag and just, out there spreading the word of truth. And then, of course, I'm going to try and get some, higher profile people on.
Yeah, as Liberty Hangout starts to grow, as your show starts to grow, I'm sure you'll have a lot of people that have been innovators in the hemp business and the cannabis business and in libertarianism in general. So we're really looking forward to it, and we're glad to have you on board.
Well, I love working with you guys. I like seeing, I read a lot of the articles that are published, and I just like the professionalism that is exuded through Liberty Hangout. I think it's a really great place to be. I think you guys as the leaders are moving in the right direction, definitely doing good things for Liberty, getting Liberty spread to new people, finding new bases that wouldn't ever, consider libertarianism. And I think that's extremely important right now, because you have a lot of people that are just fed up with the left and the right, whether they're, from the left or the right themselves, and they don't know anything about libertarianism, or they just know it's CNN said they're a bunch of crazy retards, no one should listen to them, and that's all they know about it. So they're looking for something that's essentially right under their nose. So that's, witnessing you guys going out and doing that, I'm totally on board with that. I think it's an awesome thing, and as Liberty Hangout itself grows, as an entity itself, I think that reach will expand, and you'll be able to make more positive change, throughout, the country as a whole. Because what happens if you guys pick up another guy like me, from California or from Washington, maybe not even, for cannabis reasons, but, you guys asked, and hey, you want to write stuff, and now here I am a year later, and we're doing some pretty cool stuff. So.
And for all the listeners out there who don't know Kush as well as we do, what I love most about him is that he comes from that same sort of business background as we do, and he's willing to adapt and market the message of liberty to new demographics. So he was kind of he's taken the same journey that we have over the past year. James and I last year, we were really in sort of a little wonkish mentality with our anarcho-capitalism. We were really just preaching to the choir. But then when we started looking at all the demographics out there, we realized there's all these people that we're preaching a message to that they don't want to hear. We are going to need to engineer this in a way where they are going to want to love liberty. So we were once in that boat that believed that voting was violence. We believed that using the political system was immoral. We were in those fields, and you know what? We weren't growing the liberty movement at all by having those positions. So just by trying to maintain the most consistent position possible and trying to find new ways to adapt and market that, we've really been able to grow the liberty movement and grow ourselves.
Well, and here's, since we're going to kind of address the anarchists, with the anarchists, I love what they're doing and where they're going, and I like that they're kind of pushing the philosophical barriers and whatnot, and that's fantastic. People need to do that, but what they sometimes forget about is you have this whole world of people over here who still vote, and they're going to vote regardless of what book you read, and if you can't influence them to pass libertarian policies, we're going to get more socialism, we're going to get more fascism, we're going to get more corporatism, the markets are going to get harder to get into, money is going to get harder to come across, crime is going to continue to rise, all these things are going to continue to happen, and just sitting around being completely non-participating in everything is not the answer. I'm totally on board with not going to vote at the ballot box, but there's other things that can be done and should be done and need to be done that are going to involve the system. Our choice is not this or anarchy. It's not going to happen that way. And even if it did, let's just for the sake of simplicity, let's pretend that the state just vanished overnight. Yeah, all the bureaucrats are like, fuck this, we're done, or whatever. All the people in the country are just going to be like, oh my God, we don't have a state. Where did it go? Well, we can't fucking live without a state. And they're just going to make a new one, and it's going to, then another 200 years down the line, all of our grandchildren will be enslaved, and they'll be looking back at us like, thanks, you dicks. You didn't learn nothing when you didn't learn nothing the last time.
And this is the thing. It's about speaking the language. You have to take the same message and speak that language to so many people. I don't know if you guys are Christians. I'm not, but the story of Pentecost, after the apostles received the Holy Spirit, they went around and they were able to speak the message supposedly to so many different groups of people. And that's how we have supposedly Christianity today. It makes sense how something can grow over 2,000 years like that, because it's not about just reaching the ANCAP community or the libertarian community. It's about going out to conservatives, speaking a language to liberals, trying to bring as many people to see the logical consistency and the love of individuals that we have on our side. And that's what we need to be taking to people. You like you said before, you can read any book you want. You'll wake up tomorrow and it's going to be the same, or it's going to be worse. The history will repeat itself. It will get worse and worse and worse. So how can we take pragmatic steps moving in the right direction? And I think bringing you on is going to be a great step in that direction.
I think tailoring off of what you just said, that's what made Ron Paul so great, is that he knew how to speak the language of the American people. You know, we can be out here all day talking about the non-aggression principle, Austrian economics, but who's going to listen? Ron Paul was out there saying, hey, guys, there's this great document called the Constitution. It was ratified 300 years ago. The government was supposed to follow these rules. It's supposed to protect your liberty, but they are not following it. Let's get back to it. And just by that, all those people who were tuning into his message are now the ones that are talking about the non-aggression principle.
Well, it's just like you said, you used to say a long time ago, Justin, that if anarchy happened tomorrow, conservatives would be anarchists and liberals or leftists would be the looters and the stealers and the robbers.
Right.
So if we could prove to conservatives that the free market could provide the military, the free market could provide police forces, the free market could provide roads and everything else, but how do we get there? That's the real question. We have to get that position first.
Here's the analogy I'm using to every single conservative that I promote that to. And this is why I'm now big on the idea of privatized borders, is because I see these issues happening on the border, and I do recognize that, hey, there are all these bad people that want to come into this country, and there are the socialists that want to come in and vote for bigger government. So how can we effectively combat this? Now, if you want security, don't expect to get it at the hands of the state. Everything that the government touches turns into a post office. So if you want to be protected, why would you ever want to be protected by the post office?
Exactly. Well, yeah, something that runs like the post office. But, well, I mean, the post office does have a SWAT team, so they could protect us. But yeah, no, I totally understand what you're saying. It's about seeing. Oh, go ahead. It's about seeing those free market principles. It's just real quick. It's just about seeing those free market principles in action. Competition breeds quality. It's just that simple.
And I think that if we aren't able to, obviously it's going to be a challenge to convert a conservative right to an anarcho-capitalist, but if we're able to speak the language, if we're able to talk about, let's revert this power to the hands of the state, and they will have the incentive to compete amongst the other 49 states, they'll agree with that. And then, you know what, once we get to that world, then they'll agree to decentralize it even more. Let's get this power into the hands of the counties. That's even more competition. From there, the towns. From there, the individuals.
Well, that's what the American Revolution is.
I can even take this a step further. If I went up to a conservative and was like, what would you think about being part of an anarchist society? They're going to scrunch their nose up, act like they smelled like someone farted, and they're going to be like, I don't want to be part of no Mad Max crazy scenario. But if you approach them and you're all like, would you have any interest in perhaps visiting a decentralized voluntarist society? They've never heard that before. They have no idea what it means. They're not going to automatically reject it because they don't get that Mad Max image that pops up in their forehead like, no, fuck that.
Just go look at the definition. Just go look at the definition of anarchy on Merriam-Webster. I mean, it's ridiculous.
That's why me myself I've totally avoided the language of using the term anarchist, because it takes more time to explain, oh, we're the real anarchists, than it does to just say, why don't we just privatize everything? That's the message I'm trying to go for now, is let's just privatize everything.
I only use anarchist when I'm trying to be salacious, when I'm trying to buck the system. But yeah, I know I know what you mean for sure.
No,
Both of you guys make good points.
I already think that, like, even within the ANCAP movement, like, the perception is already evolving. It's moving forward. It's not that the outspoken anarchists want this free for all where you can just do whatever you want to whoever you want, and you take your chances if they happen to be there when it happens. That's not at all what it is. You still have law, you still have order, you still have all these things that everybody still wants and needs. You're still going to have roads and all that stuff. It's just you're redistributing the services through society in a free market fashion that's more efficient and more effective than statism will ever be, because statism does not have the mechanics inside of it to be efficient at what it's trying to do. So what is it? It's it's a monopoly on force, and what does it do? It forces people to do stuff.
Right, and I think proving this, the great thing of Austrian economics is that it's built on the idea of a priori information. It's called praxeology, and so the way that we're able to prove this and provide this is that we'll ask people, now why is it that the market provides food? And then people will answer, well, because people need food. Okay, well, do people need defense? Yeah. Okay, so why can't the market provide defense? Why can't the market provide law? Why can't the market provide everything that the government claims that it can do? You know?
And there's
Yeah, I
absolutely
mean,
no reason that it shouldn't. It's just this belief that everybody has is the problem. Well, if we can get out there and we can educate people and we can start initiatives and start doing things, if people see results, if they're like, hey, everybody said this thing was not going to do it, and the thing did it, and that particular thing is better, or that market has enhanced or seen a surge, or whatever the thing may be. If you can physically show them results, then that's completely different than getting in an argument with someone about something that they completely have no idea or understanding or comprehension of whatsoever. So,
And
like,
what's incredible is that the results are right in front of our eyes. We look at all the great things that free market capitalism is able to provide us with. You know, when I was at CPAC, I challenged a conservative to a debate. It's on our YouTube channel. You can look it up. It's by this guy named Kyle Foley. He's a writer over at redstate.com, and I was talking to him about anarcho-capitalism versus a statist conservative society. And he was agreeing with me with all these principles of capitalism, yet he wasn't able to take it to the last logical conclusion. He was saying to me, oh, if we abolish the state, then I think that all these legal agencies would just monopolize and create a new state. And so I said to him, I was like, okay, if that's the case, then why is that not happening in every single other sector controlled by the free market? Why is it that just in this one field you believe that there's going to be a natural monopoly when in every other single field where there are these competing agencies competing for the most amount of profit, why is it that they're not monopolizing?
and the last thing I'll say is this in terms of the pragmatic nature of how we're going to get there. That's why I see this election as a win-win. There's guys like Tom Woods, there's guys like Jason Stapleton that believe that we can still move the dial back in our favor using the political process, using the system we have now. I'm a person that believes that if we do get a Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump presidency, I believe it will be over for that type of mind state. So I see a complete, I mean, on both sides of the aisle, on both sides of, or on any side of the ideology that's in American politique today, I think that we're going to see something great within the next 10 years, whether it be moving, whether a Gary Johnson presidency springboards into an Adam Kokesh presidency, which springboards into something else, which I don't see happening. But otherwise, I see a uniting behind a common black and gold flag, or a Don't Tread on Me flag, or a Mullen Labe flag, or any of these things, because I think that's where society is headed. Don't listen to the mainstream media. Don't listen to your teachers in school. This old way of statism is going to die one way or the other. And I see that keep going. What would you say?
No, I like that's exactly it. We can make the change. That's the thing. We have the numbers. We have the ability. We have the knowledge. We have the technology. We have the skill. All someone has to do is get out there, make a successful model, and make it popular. Because what do sheep do? They follow. They don't understand.
Exactly.
They're not going to learn or care about the mechanics. But if all the, if for the women, all the hot guys, and if for all the men, all the hot chicks are all marching off in this direction, they're all going to follow them wherever they go. And if it's to this new society where everything is great and nothing bad can happen to you unless you do something bad to someone else first, how are they going to not agree with that?
That's exactly why I love stuff that Austin Peterson's doing with the Libertarian Republic. I think that the Libertarian Republic is going to be one of the main political magazines out there in the next 10 years. That's why I love what Laura Myers is doing over at Liberty Viral. I love the fact that she's combating the babes of Trump with babes of Liberty. Stuff like that is just Jason Stapleton, I think, is going to be the Rush Limbaugh of libertarian radio. I think that this is the direction we're headed now because people are so fed up. And I couldn't agree more.
I think going off of your last point, James, where you were talking about how it's all going to unravel once we get a Clinton or Trump presidency. I remember it was a year ago where you recorded a video that went semi-viral in which you were saying that a Hillary Clinton presidency would be the best thing for liberty because it would be enough to wake up the nation because she would be the worst possible one. And you know what? I'm starting to think that you're probably right because
if Austin Peterson just posted an article about it on Libertarian Republic like 2 days ago.
Okay.
That same
I didn't read his article.
Yeah.
But what I'm going to say here is that I believe that a Clinton presidency would be the best thing for liberty because if you get Trump in office, you're going to have the conservatives that are going to give him a little more leeway like they did with Bush. But if you have Clinton in there, and then like you've been saying all along, once northern laws come to southern states, you are going to have secession. So obviously there's going to be all the fed up liberals if Trump becomes president, but I don't think they know what to do with themselves, and they don't value liberty the same way that we do. So I don't think anything good comes from a Trump presidency. I think it's just going to be mass chaos in the streets. It's going to be bad. But I think that if Clinton wins, I think we will see those freedom-loving Republicans start calling for secession and start calling for some sort of intellectual revolution of some sort in this country.
I'm waiting for the day where I can start cutting the stars off. You have no idea. I have it here ready.
That's awesome.
But anyway, I think that was awesome. So thanks so much for coming on, Kush. That was amazing. I got educated tonight. Actually, that was a lot I didn't know.
Well, I was kind of flying by the seat of my pants tonight, but as I said, in the future, when I do my shows, I'm actually, I just want this so the audience knows, I'm actually going to be researching like the things that I'm going to be talking about and whatnot, and because education is going to be like another thing.
We just got educated here today.
Yeah, because what's behind me here, this is nothing but good, and the only thing that's stopping it from being good is ignorance. So once people see that, the potential that it has, if everybody had the same view that I had about this, it would be legal everywhere overnight, and everybody be growing it because everybody would be like, money grows on trees. It certainly does, and I need to get me some.
When do you plan on having your first show, Kush?
I'm actually going to start recording content very soon, so I'm looking mid-July, late July at the latest. I really want to have a show up by July 15th, though. But as soon as I'll have that penciled in within the next few days, so as soon as I know, you guys will know.
Awesome, and you guys will be able to check that out.
I had to take a picture for my Snapchat of the background there.
And when Kush starts that, you'll be able to check that out on libertyhangout.org. And you're also going to be having that on your own website, Kush, correct?
Yes, I still got to get the domain, but it's more than likely going to be freemanfreedom.com.
freemanfreedom.com, folks. It's going to be quite a tongue twister, but easy to spell. Thank you so much for coming on tonight, Kush. It was a real pleasure.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome, and thank you guys so much for tuning into the Liberty Hangout podcast. Be sure to tune into the show again on this Sunday when Eric July will be moderating a debate between myself and Charles Perallo from Being Libertarian, where we will try to answer the question of whether or not libertarians should love Gary Johnson. And make sure you subscribe to the Liberty Hangout podcast on iTunes, subscribe here to our YouTube channel, and make sure you check out libertyhangout.org to read some awesome Liberty-minded material from a great lineup of writers. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we will see you again on Sunday.